Okay, got it. Yeah, so my name's Laura Smith-Riva. I live in the United States in the state of Vermont, which is on the East Coast, the Northeast coast of Vermont. So we're just coming into our spring time up here. I am as was said in the introduction, a certified natural dreamwork practitioner. And natural dreamwork is a way of working with dreams to enliven the images of the dream rather than interpret them. So I work with folks one-on-one in one-on-one sessions mainly. The sessions are 60 to 90 minutes. And during that time, it's really an exploration of the images of the dreams and the feelings that those images evoke. So the way I like to think about it is, you know, interpretation of dreams is one thing, and the mind always wants to interpret the symbols of the dream, the actions of the dream, the landscape, and so on. And the mind knows a lot and wants to create a narrative out of what comes through the dream material. And what I'm most interested in is how we respond to those images from the intuitive body. So I think of like heart and gut and the knowing that they have. So the knowing of the mind versus the knowing of the body, the knowing of the heart, and placing the greater emphasis on the knowing of the heart and body. And that is really coming through the feeling. So we're talking about understanding what those images mean for us based on our deep intuitive knowing. And so for many of us, and I think we'll probably get into this a little bit more in our conversation, if there is trauma, and most of us have some form of it, whether it's a direct experience of an event, whether it's an accumulated form of trauma that's related to our family of origin, which may be constellating in our lives, or ancestral trauma that many of us also carry. That tends to affect how we perceive. And so it mucks with our intuition, basically. So I'm maybe getting a little off track from the introduction, so I'll kind of pull back to my own background. I started working with dreams. I recorded dreams in journals from the time I was little, probably early teens. But it wasn't until about maybe 15 years ago that I started really working with dreams in a very intentional way. And that was due to my own personal work and where I was at in that work, which was I was coming through some very powerful and important healing work. And I had some really powerful dreams, and I wanted to know what they meant. And I became involved in an organization called, that was at the time called North of Eden, which practiced what they called archetypal dream work. And so natural dream work is really, in many ways, an offshoot from that. Those of us who are involved in the natural dream work program, many of us the founding group came through the North of Eden training programs and from that sort of lineage. Let's see, I started working with clients one-on-one in 2012, and I've had a steady client base since then. What more can I say? I guess I could comment on the Druidry. So I am practicing Druid of the Green Mountain Druid Order, which is located here in Vermont. And I do see a very strong connection between the kind of what we might call shamanic work of my ancestral connection to dream work. So a lot of the work that we do in Druidry it's nature-based. It's connecting to nature through that intuitive felt body, through magic. And so I bring those two together in my work one-on-one with clients when the opportunity presents itself. And I'm developing some additional programming to support folks who do have an interest in a deeper connection to nature through working with dreams and the natural world. I guess I could stop there unless there's something I haven't covered that you want me to make sure I touch on, Brinda. Oh, you're muted.
No, this is good for now. I mean, of course, I want you to talk a little bit about the work itself, but we can get to that with respect to trauma in a little while. This is great for now. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
Katia, would you be able to introduce yourself, your work?
I can. Laura, I wanted to know if you would like us to thank you in some way. So in the groups where I work with the children, especially, we have some routines, some body-based routines. Is there something you would like love or flowers or popcorn, fireworks? To thank you for
Flowers.
Flowers. Okay. Yeah, I have my. So then I will need the group to do this with me. So whether you have your camera on and off, it's your choice, but maybe picking a basket in your arms. So maybe going through this with me. And what kind of flowers do you like, Laura?
I love the tulips.
Tulips? Okay, yeah. So we pick some tulips, we put it in a basket. What else? Colors? Red, yellow. Do you like?
Red, yellow, purple.
Purple, all right. Hey. So I'm going to give you some magnolias because I love those, and freesias, and maybe other people have ideas. Oh, I see everyone really picking in their flower trees. And then once we have all these flowers, we give it a little shake. And at 1, 2, 3, we're going to shower you with these flowers. 1, 2, and 3. Whoosh. For you, Laura. Thank you. Oh, receiving. Yes.
Oh, lovely.
I feel like I've just received the Oscars.
All that we do are mini accumulated Oscars. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And I'm so happy you started because I always get a little bit of Zoom anxiety still. Can you believe it? After 3 years. So another way I'd like to introduce myself, and I always do this as well on Zoom, especially on Zoom, but is to make a big circle. So inviting you to make a big circle. And with this, you can open your left arm if you'd like, your right arm. And maybe in your home there are people, but maybe you can look right and left in your screen. And then maybe, yes, I see people looking side to side. Maybe behind you there might be people. And there might be a lot of people on the screen that you see and not see. I see pictures, but I also see living beings. And then bring all that back to yourself, maybe connecting with your heart space. You may feel, I feel my heart beating fast again because I'm on Zoom and I get really nervous. You're welcome to close your eyes if that feels comfortable to do so. And maybe taking a moment to thank yourself for showing up today. It's 7 o'clock and you took some time out of your busy day or your sick day or your tired day, family day to be here. So thank you. Thank you for being here. Yes. So that's a little bit about me, and I wanted to take a moment to share a poem and an image, if that's okay. Yeah, maybe because it's the expressive, it's an expressive arts program, but also because I haven't done that in a while to go back to poetry and story. So this takes me back. Can you all see my screen? If yeah, no, yeah, this is, do you see the flock? The flock of birds. So yeah, so I will share a poem with you that is called The Wild Geese. And I think it says a lot about me and my work. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things. So I get a little bit goosebumps in my body. The wild geese. This is the migration of birds. Is I will stop sharing my screen, but it's something. Well, in North America, the geese migrate every year, and I'm Canadian born, but I left 30 years ago, so it's really just my passport. But I see myself a little bit like a nomad, and I really believe in this flocking of birds and this interconnectedness, and especially my work with communities. So I have, most of my work has been with communities, has been with groups, and the strength of the connectedness, of the reconnectedness of communities is really important to me, and I have seen its incredible strength as well. And it also, the flock of birds for me is also displacement, and what happens when this flock is displaced and is broken, damaged, and now we think about climate change now, but there are a lot of things we can put in this metaphors. So for me, when I went back to study dance movement therapy, the flock followed me throughout my studies. It was very symbolic, and somehow with this program, or this today, I felt like bringing it back in. And then this poem of the wild geese that was sent to me, like Brinda shared, I was in Poland and Moldova as a humanitarian worker. That's a big part of what I do for work. A friend of mine sent it to me, and it just came at the right time, just reminding me, hey, yeah, I'm a little bit like a wild geese in the world, and I'm flying and traveling all over the world, and so it just inspired me again I went back to Canada again this year twice, to my roots, so it inspired me again to share this, to show you a little bit who I am. So I'm a dance movement therapist. I work clinically. When I say dance movement therapist, I like to sometimes move away the word dance, because it can scare people a little bit sometimes in the context where I work. But it can also be the dance of the breath, the dance of our nervous system. So it can be very broad. But I work clinically at the Trauma Institute in the Netherlands. So I work with groups with complicated grief and PTSD, so post-traumatic stress disorder. So that's one part of my work. Another big part of my work is my humanitarian work. So I work offering psychosocial support, and more specifically developing psychosocial interventions. So what does that mean? Well, I've been a lot involved in work with children, so developing movement-based psychosocial intervention that involve dance, that involve body-based practices, that involve sports-based games, but everything that involves the body. And this is mostly developed for children on the move. So we work a lot in refugee camps, at the borders, and reception centers. So this has been a big part of my work, the psychosocial support, which is very preventive, strengthening our resource, reconnecting us to the community and to our individual strengths and the community. So that's a big part of what I do. And a third thing is really my consultancy work, my teaching, my trainings, a lot in India with different expressive arts therapy program. I work a lot in counseling centers, so really looking at how do we integrate the body in a clinical setting, in a community setting, as why is our body so important. So that's me in a short nutshell. I don't know if that's enough for now. And I will
Sure.
close it and pass it on to, I think, Sukhvinder. Yeah. Thank you.
Ah, thank you, Laura and Katia. That is so energizing listening to both of you. Like, there is such a deep chord of resonance with both of you. And it's really wonderful that we are weaving something together here. So thank you, Brinda, for the work you do and this amazing programs that you run. I have attended one of your workshops and I will never forget that whole process of moving from the center. And it's like such an important mantra for us. Especially the work that I do with the feminine. It's all about moving from the center. So I hate talking about myself, but okay, so I'm a applied behavioral scientist, and Vasu, who's sitting here, is a very, very, very key to my journey as a process worker. It's a long and arduous journey where we have to face ourselves in very, very deep ways. So it's funny that I'm sitting here and Vasu is listening to me now. But I take this opportunity to thank you, Vasu, for shaping me and being such a part of my journey. Yeah, so this training that I have of being a process facilitator gave me an opportunity to sit over the last 25 years with endless small groups of people, diving very, very deep into journeys of emotional resonance, finding our reconnecting with that with our feelings and repairing the broken connections with each other and relearning a language of connection. And it served as a very beautiful background to the work that I then stepped into, which is to do with the divine feminine. It's more than a decade that I've been working mostly with groups of women in India and other places in the world. And definitely also with men who are interested and who show up. So I also do men's groups to introduce them to the feminine. And it's an interesting journey because if somebody were to ask me, where did you learn this work? There is no place I went to learn this work except into myself. And I guess this is the way it has to be, where as women, we begin to trust the wisdom that we already have. And for that, we have to unveil so many layers of conditioning, so much trauma, listen to the dream body, listen to what is coming from our core. So as I went on this journey, I mean, it was like, I don't want to do this journey alone. I want to do it with other women. So I gave out a call to groups of women, and when the women arrived and we sat together, it was so nourishing and so natural that this work cannot be done sitting individually in the house. We need to be in gatherings of women and men. And we began to speak about loss. We began to speak about our longings, about love, about disappointment. We laughed and cried together. And gradually we entered into the mysteries of the feminine. Because who is she? Nobody has a clue. We've forgotten her so deeply. She's there inside of us. She is who we are, but the disconnection has been so complete that it was like the journey was really one of remembering her. And so this work is, although it is very seamless, what we are reclaiming and remembering, it can be kind of categorized into womb mysteries, and that itself is one huge area where we reclaim the forgotten temple inside our own bodies, which is the womb. And when I do the womb initiations, it's like a switch happens in consciousness. Suddenly, it's like I've come home. And the journey of the feminine it's like a downward journey. We have been too much in the bias towards upward journeys. So the downward journey is where we bring the consciousness from the head into the womb. So even as I speak, can I invite all of you to put your left hand on your womb and the right hand on your heart, or the area where yeah. And just make an intent that I bring my awareness into these very powerful centers and also begin to live from my womb and my heart. There is so much mystery throbbing here, even right now. Thank you. And as we deepen our connection with the womb, we will actually start to feel the pulsing. And another very powerful area of work that we do in reclaiming the divine feminine is connecting with our bodies very deeply as sacred instruments, and making deep underground journeys, dealing with our shame, dealing with our shadows, trauma work, which brings about a very powerful lifestyle change as well. So it's definitely about choosing healthy ways of living, choosing healthy choices. And then, of course, it's about rebuilding community. One of the ways in which the feminine was lost was by creating separations, separating women from women, women from men, women from earth, men from earth. So it's really this whole building this network of connections back again, everything with everything. So these are some of the things that happen when the feminine begins to be reclaimed. And another area of work that I'm passionate about is the whole decolonizing aspect of our lives, where we start to connect back to our indigenous wisdoms. That itself has been very exciting, what it's bringing up. So, yeah, this is some of the things that I do, and I love every minute of what I do. And definitely also, this, when we speak about the feminine, divine feminine, she is never there without the divine masculine. So automatically, it means that we heal the relationship with the masculine. So that is definitely part of the work that happens. And I truly feel that when the feminine feels safe, the war will end in the world. There will be no war. Because the masculine can come back into his space of love. That is who he is. So that is why I feel this work is so deeply significant for us now. Yeah, I think that's for now.
Thank you so much, Sukhvinder. Yeah, thank you also for bringing up points from what Katia and Laura had shared. I just want to just go through all the stuff that for me is really exciting, and I hope we can direct this conversation a little bit more. And I think all three of you all have mentioned it, but Laura talks about the knowing of the body, and she spoke about the heart and the gut and listening to that. And I think we echo it, Sukhvinder, when you talk about the womb. Katia talks about interconnectedness, community. Sukhvinder talked about the gathering, and I really see it as the circles, like gathering of women in circles, but even of the human in circles, and a remembering of who we are. So I really looking at, I know we've, and especially with the first year, we do a lot of personal work, but I do think that looking at the collective and our role in the collective. And Sukhvinder, you spoke about it so nicely, like it's really this inner journey that allow the descent into our own depths that allow us to retrieve the gift that we have to offer the collective, and what is the shift and or the change that we are all hoping to see, or yeah, just wanting to say that, and giving the space again to Katia. If you can just tell us a little bit more about especially what the last few years have looked like for you, work-wise, and what are you noticing with clients, with communities? What is the, well, I say longing or desire? What is the need? What are we all seeking? Where do we hope to find it? Yeah, Katia, if you want to share.
It's a very big question. Suddenly.
I know. But however, I mean,
Yeah, and if people who are listening want to interrupt us or chat, put something in the chat, or you're curious about something, please, you're welcome to put it down in the chat, or raise your hands, or unmute yourself. The last years of my work, and when you say the last year, do you mean the years including the pandemic and yes, is that where?
yes, I think with the pandemic, because it's really been kind of global, like a global experience.
Yeah.
I know that you've always been working with trauma and community, but I
Yeah.
think the pandemic really woke us up to
Yeah.
what a lot of us were not seeing earlier.
Yeah. I can. Where should to start? Well, maybe I start with from what I do, because I mostly work with refugees, asylum seekers. We can get in political terms of how we name displaced populations, or population affected by war and conflict, or people who had to move to another country. So my work always includes layers and layers and layers of daily stress, layers and layers of very stressful life events, and layers of traumatic life events, and that becomes very heavy for a human body. And so what has the pandemic done and what has displacement done is that it creates a big disconnection and isolation. And so that exasperates, that just makes whatever was difficult even more difficult. And to be very specific, for instance, some people either it made their depression worse, or it induced a psychosis, or so it just, whatever was already there just was exasperated by the loneliness, by the disconnection, by the fact that they couldn't go on with their routines that they had, either through a community meeting, either through a class, either through their therapist. So that has been very complex. And not only that, if you look at some of the communities in Uganda, for instance, in Bidi Bidi settlement camp, one of the biggest refugee camps, what happens when suddenly children can't go to school for 2 years, because there's also no Zoom, no internet? What happens when us and our teams cannot go out to continue to offer the programs and the interventions that they were doing? Well, it means that a lot of the daily problems, either gender-based violence, or it means that child mothers rates increased by 70%. So whatever issues that were already present were just emphasized, let's say. On the other hand, so that seems, I don't know if we're spiraling downwards, but now not into downwards into that feminine, but it feels just very heavy. But on the other hand, what has been for me, and always for me, because of maybe because of the work that I do, but the incredible resilience for me is I would say that I work from a resilience-based approach. So really always reconnecting with resources. What are my resources? My social resources, my spiritual resources. What are my religious resources? What are my physiological resources? What are my psychological resources? So because my work has already always been reconnecting to resources, it also brings a lot of hope, because there's always something. There's always some light somewhere. So that has enlightened as well in many ways my work, because just in Ukraine recently, when we work with Ukraine teachers, Ukraine psychologists, Ukraine's translators, with the Polish communities, and then suddenly in the midst of their own displacement, they are willing to give and to receive, and that gives a lot of hope. That when you bring it back to that connectedness, that you've all talked about, connecting in authentic ways, and really from your body as a home. If you have nothing else, you have your body as your home, and that goes with you. So and that's why it's incredibly powerful when we work with groups with these movement-based psychosocial intervention, when we're moving together, when we're playing together. There's a simple routine or a circle touching our hearts, or reconnecting with the inner child. So that brings a lot of hope and light. So this is a little bit what my work has been, and whether it's in the Ukraine response, whether it's in the South Sudan response, or whether it's in protracted displacement, what we call, so refugees who are 10 years, 15 years, 20 years displaced, the darkness is there, but the light is always there. So it's always finding a balance, and there is the value of being in our bodies with each other, co-regulating. So we are co-regulating with each other, and that's been in all of this I think the biggest strength. Don't know if this makes any sense, but please
No, it does, Katia. Thank you. I actually love the thought of, I know how powerful it is to embody hope, and then to have a collective that embodies hope. I can really imagine how powerful that must be. And you talk about co-regulating as a group, and I wonder, maybe Laura, it might be a good time for you to come in, because you also talk about nature and what is it to co-regulate with Gaia or with nature, and and how do dreams show us that, show us that hope or resilience. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Katia and Sukhvinder. There's so many things that have been said that I feel a response in me. So many wonderful things, and I really feel the resonance of our fields and what we're doing. I want to say that the dreams, there's many layers to dream images as they come through. And some of those layers do relate to what's happening in the world. But truth be told, I believe that the dreams really they carry no moral judgment, and they do not really care for the machinations per se of the world. They're most interested in helping us discover the truth inside us that has to do with, I think what Sukhvinder referred to as the descent towards soulfulness, or towards connection, towards inner love, towards that union of the divine feminine, the divine masculine. And there's nothing more fierce, and when we encounter her, and those of you who have, than the girl when she shows up in the dreams. If you've ever seen the movie The Whale Rider or The Beasts of the Southern Wild, these are manifestations of the girl in her fierceness that has nothing to do with femininity per se, but has to do with her ability her resilience, and her ability to continue to love and have hope despite her circumstances. And she won't be kept down, she won't be subdued. So she has this very, very strong and powerful will to rise up in us, and we see this in dreams. Now, dreams speak in what I think of as an ancient language, a language that existed before we had the spoken word. So this is why they're so confounding, of course, because they're coming in images, mainly in images, and so it can feel very esoteric, like, well, what does that mean? It seems so sometimes so wild, so crazy. But the meaning is there. And when we begin to unlock the mystery of whatever that image is for the individual dreamer, which is coming through their own psyche, through their proclivities, their life experiences, their trauma, like all of that, the meaning is there. And dreamers who work with their dreams in an intentional way have those aha moments. And those aha moments are moments that are felt. Sometimes they do come in through the understanding of a particular symbol. And I have worked with and any client work that I speak of, just so you know, I do have permission from the clients whose work I may mention today to mention their work in a general way. But I was working with a client yesterday whose particular history is that of having been given up for adoption and landing in a family who she was very different from, and sort of not always sort of feeling how she didn't belong, and not, really not feeling the connection. So feeling that loss, a severance that happened when she was disconnected from her biological mom and landed in with a family who really didn't understand her and was very different from her. But the dream that she had, so we talk about hope. I appreciate this idea of there's a lot of darkness, right? But there's always hope. And this is true of the dreams, will show us what I think of as the promise of the dream, which is the hope, which is the light. And in this case, the dreamer stepped out of a very chaotic scene where she was engaged in what we might think of as a conditioned behavior, which was caretaking, which helps her feel in control in the world, and stepped out of that scene, which was in an airport, and stepped outside and saw in front of her a landscape of tall cedar trees, and beyond the cedar trees, smoke rising above the cedar trees. And the feeling that she had was the feeling of coming home. And so as we explored that image, for her, she is of Native American descent. So she is from the indigenous peoples of this land here in North America. And her adoptive family is a white family. So for her to have that moment of feeling and seeing that, and having that sense of coming home, it's like opening to the promise and the hope of what it feels like to have that connection where you know you belong. So the way we worked with that dream, and one of the things that came through for her had to do with sort of her ancestors, and her ancestors reaching through the timelessness of the dream to make a connection with her so that she could feel in her body and her heart that sense of belonging and connection. So when one is asked, what does it feel like to feel connected? She can close her eyes and smell the smoke, see the smoke rising above the trees, feel the cedar trees, and know that that is what it feels like for her in this moment. Now, other dreams will come, other images. She may get closer to deeper levels of connection, but if this is a step towards, and a powerful one. It was a very moving moment for her to feel that place of connection. And it was kind of sitting in opposition to a feeling of always needing to get out, a feeling of being trapped because she's not where she feels like she belongs. And how this constellates in each of us is different, of course. So the images that come to the dreams, they really are specific to us. So we cannot apply these like blanket interpretations to the symbols when they come, because they are so specific to us. I love the conversation, the mention of conditioning. I think, Sukhvinder, you mentioned the word conditioning. That's a word that we use in natural dream work that relates to all of the layers, the ways that we have learned to cope basically and survive our suffering, for lack of to use a simple word. That word suffering, we can think of it in its larger sense. As humans, we will suffer. There's no avoiding that. We can talk about trauma. We could talk about, that kind of suffering that we can tie to a specific event or ancestral suffering that kind of gets handed down through the suffering of our family of origin, and how all of the conditioned ways of responding to that suffering play out in us. So one of the big pieces of work that the dreams want to do with us initially, especially, and ongoing, and this is true for me in my personal work, is to continue to understand our conditioning. And we could think of that conditioning as often what has helped us survive. So it's been super useful, but maybe not so useful anymore when it's blocking us from our deeper desires. And when I say desire, speaking of the longing for the divine feminine, the longing for the connection to the divine masculine, the longing for the girl boy energy in us to be united and in its full expression of power and love. So the dreams do this really, they will never give up on us. They are going to continue to kind of knock on that door, and sometimes quite fiercely showing us how we are avoiding the vulnerability of deep feeling. And some of the conditioned responses can be running, they can be fighting. You talk fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. They could be fawning, negotiating. They could be caretaking, perhaps a form of fawning, we could say, caretaking others to avoid being vulnerable ourselves. Lots and lots of ways those behaviors show in the dream. And of course, to get back to your original question, Brinda, about the natural world, because the dreams are speaking in such an ancient language, the beings who populate the natural world also populate the landscape of our dreams. And sometimes other beings, even mythical beings, will show up, dragons and things like this. And there's so much symbolism to those beings, but there's also, like always, a personal connection for us in those beings. They carry an energy that's important for us to tap into, to feel into. If the lion comes in the dream, I had a client who had a lion who came in the dream and clawed at her in the area of her womb and her vagina. And it was a terrifying dream, and also a dream showing, one, the lion wanting to make contact with her, but also showing some wounding. And the lion sort of carrying both the idea of wounding to the feminine, and also the power of that being wanting to come through that wound. And very, intense material to work with when these creatures from, that populate the earth come to us in our dreams. Bears, lions, tigers, and bears, snakes. These beings come because they live in the collective unconscious, and they carry huge power. So when they come in the dreams, they are carrying medicine. The dream itself is a form of medicine, and these beings want to deliver medicine. So when the venomous snake bites, what is it trying to kill? It is trying to kill the part of us that is not needed in the journey towards soulfulness. So yes, something must die, but what wants to live is connected to that hope that we're talking about. And so the dreams are helping us let go of or release that which is not ours to carry, that which we do not need, and allowing us to grow into the full expression of our soulful nature. And again, the dream doesn't care about, and this may sound harsh, the war that's happening, or some of these things. It really is concerned with, how can one person at a time, how can we become our truer selves? And in that way, through that process and through connecting with others, as we're doing in this circle even now, can we bring more of that light and hope into the world to offset what is always there, which is the suffering and the darkness. I guess I can take a pause there and allow space for others. And I don't know if it looks like there's some chat. I don't know if it's any.
No.
Oh, okay.
I just put a YouTube video of Eve Ensler. It reminded, when you spoke about the girl,
yeah.
It reminded me of this video, which is really powerful, about embrace your inner girl. She talks about the girl cell in each of us that's able, that's resilient, that stands up to something. Yeah. So I thought it might be interesting for everybody to look at that.
And I could share just quickly a dream from a client where in the dream, the girl was coming, right? So from far away overseas, she was coming, and in the dreamer said she had a message for all the world to hear. But her journey to make it to where she was going to deliver her message, which was the West Coast of the United States in this particular dreamer's motif, was a journey that took her. She had to go underground. People had to help her, and sort of like an underground railway. She was pursued and persecuted, but there were masses of people traveling to the West Coast to see her and hear the message that she had to deliver. And that was the client's dream. And I really felt that was a dream for the collective, not just the dreamer. So there are dreams that I really believe are for the collective. Like we need to share these dreams because people need to hear that, yes, this is true. She's there and she has a message for all the world to hear. It actually brings up a lot of feeling in me whenever I think of that dream, or even to speak of it right now. Yeah. I've spoken.
Beautiful and powerful.
No,
Thank
yeah.
you. Maybe Sukhvinder, I think it just goes directly into the work that you do as well. If you want to respond and just pick up any of the threads from either Katia or Laura. But I can see so many connections, and
Absolutely. And so just so full with whatever Laura just shared. And right now I want to sit with her and ask her to work with my dreams.
I'd be happy to.
Yeah. So what Laura was saying about that these dreams need to be talked about and discussed and shared. I do these yearly retreats called Woman is Medicine. And in that, as a precursor to that retreat, from a month before, we start collecting the dreams of the women who are arriving for the retreat. And one of our sisters, Anuradha Prasad, who works with dreams, she collates all these dreams. And we work with them, and then we see what is emerging. It's one of the most powerful processes that we do when we bring in these dreams of the women. And I can see how important it is to weave these dreams together. Yeah, each one of us is dreaming so powerfully now. And if all the dreams of all the women and men are brought together in a community and shared, and then the wisdom of that is taken and it guides us forward like it did in the ancient times, what could be possible? Like these come from very, very ancient places, and it's a very ancient languages, Laura just said. So yeah. So in our gatherings, one of the key questions that I had is, what would it mean to end the cycle of suffering? What would it mean for us? So while we work very deeply with our bodies, and actually the bodies of women are so frozen, so deeply frozen. So numb. So this whole process of unfreezing, coming back, coming alive, it's a slow process. But at the same time, it's while we work with the traumas and the deep wounds and our sufferings, we also simultaneously access our joys. Not to forget that we are joyous beings. And one of the things about the feminine is that all the processes are very simple. The utter simplicity of it, these are not very complex things that we do. We do very simple things. We drink tea, we laugh and cry and dance. And we are reclaiming. So one of the very key practices is the practice of nourishing ourselves. We don't have to do big things only and go to therapists and do trauma work. We can just be sitting here. Here I am drinking my cup of tea. I just take a pause and I say, this is so nourishing. When I take that pause and I say this to myself and I live this moment fully, this tiny moment of time in my day, and I say to myself, oh, this is so nourishing. It's such a powerful biofeedback to the body. The body is always hearing what we are thinking and what we are saying. So if you can do this, say 10 times in a day, I look out of the window and I see the blue sky or I see the trees sway. And just in that pause, I breathe and say, oh, this is so nourishing. And if I start to begin a practice of simply doing this many, many times in a day, I begin to fill my tank. You know what Katia spoke about resourcing, such an important thing. How we begin to resource ourselves. So one of the things also that I bring to the women is about the gifts that we have. Can I first offer them to me? Can I first nourish myself with the gifts? I run so fast with my gifts to offer to the world. You know, this habit of caretaking, being useful. And it's part of the fawning process also, that how can I be useful to you so that I can have a better place in the world? Can I have the audacity of offering my gift to myself and nourishing myself with it before I give it to another? And I will only offer from the overflowing cup, not from the empty cup. I offer you my overflow. So it's a bold thing to do, because we have been so deeply trained just to be useful to other people. So yeah, so breaking these deep patterns till eventually you yourself become the medicine. Just by being who you are. So yeah, it's such a beautiful journey.
Thanks, Sukhvinder. I just want to share one word of one sentence of one of your writings, and I'd love if you could share more, of course. But I want to just read this out because I thought it was just really lovely. You say, every day she learns that the opposite of divide is divine. And I just wanted to bring that here in this space because that moved me very deeply, actually.
Yeah,
you know,
and another thing, thank you. Another thing is that when we start embracing the feminine, we learn to lose. We learn the power of losing. It seems so, you know, we have been so obsessed with winning that for somebody, a man or a woman, to stand up and say, I'm ready to lose in this game. I'm not in the game. It's okay if I'm losing in this game. And in that process, we find something so powerful. We find ourselves. We step away from this culture of being consumed by these very seductive dictates of the world and say, no, it's okay if I lose out on these games, and if I'm not ticking off any of those check boxes. So yeah, we are finding other ways of being. It's very, very contra to the mainstream process.
Brinda, you're muted.
Sorry, I'm just putting that down in the chat also, Sukhvinder, just that one line, because I wonder if you can, and this I think is really for, I think everyone spoke about it, Katia, Laura, and Sukhvinder. And I wonder if you can just expand a little bit more about that and about the connection of, what is, I love what you say about losing, because I think that's very present for me, especially right now. And I feel like a lot of losing that which has been dear to us, but is not us. That's beautiful. And I also love this line of the opposite of divide is divine. And that paradox, of like everything being us, and also letting go of that which is not us, that which has been placed on us, or that which we have held dear as our identity. And I wonder if you can just talk a little bit more about that, even through dreams, even through what Katia was saying.
Yeah, I love I love the the concept of losing. I put in the chat surrender. Like there for many of us, and this isn't true for everyone, based on my experience working with dreamers, is and it has to be discerned through the process of working, in my case, one-on-one with folks with their dreams. But for many of us, it really is about surrendering, giving up control. And the classic example we often use in natural dream work is the dream of driving the car. Now, for many of us, if we're behind the wheel and we're driving the car, we're in control. Often the dream will throw all kinds of fun little things to kind of disrupt that feeling of being in control, like the brakes won't work, or the car starts driving itself, or we get blocked somehow. A big, huge boulder falls in the road. We have to get out of the car, and now we're faced with a bit more of the unknown. For many of us, it's true that our work is to take our hands off the wheel, or to like pull the oars in from the boat and let the stream carry us a little bit. And I think sometimes of those moments as they'll come through the dreams as moments of surrender, where we feel embattled and we let go of some way that we're looking through the lens of trauma, maybe. There are situations, though, I don't want to say that everybody has to take their hands off the wheel and that's everybody's work, because it's not actually true. There are many people who are their ego constructs are weaker, and actually there's a building up process that the dream will engage in to bring a person back into feeling more agency, where they have not felt agency in their life. And so their work might be like to actually get their hands on the wheel. They may always find themselves with no agency, and then they may have a dream where suddenly they're the one in charge and in control of their destiny in that moment in the dream. And it's a really important, powerful moment. So I don't want to just, not mention that side of it. While I do think that our world is more dominated by that sort of tipped over masculine energy, I think of it sometimes as like overly aggressive, controlling, need to be in control kind of energy at times. And that control can come through in the caretaking, right? I mean, that how can I be useful for others so that I can have a better place in the world is a form of control. So I would say most of us are falling into like the place where we need to surrender a little bit. Maybe that's just my experience, and maybe that's because it's my own personal experience, but also I do see it with dreamers as well. And then there's this other piece of losing that you talked about, Sukhvinder talked about, which is, and I touched on it, which is letting go of, and that which is not ours to carry. So like all of these things that we've taken on, it's that idea of like what needs to die in order for us to live. And I think that is something that we learn about. And often, and I say this to folks who are working with dreams, like what seems like is good in the dreams is sometimes not so great for us. And sometimes the thing that seems like it's really bad is actually something that we need. So, you could take the classic dream where you're running from something. Maybe it's even the bear or the lion. And what really needs to happen is we need to stop and face into this thing that we think is so bad. Whereas like in the dream, it could feel really good to be, organizing or cleaning or caretaking, or ways that will take us out of maybe the deeper feeling, but they actually feel really good to us. Those things are things we need to lose, so to speak, in order to be a little bit more vulnerable and open to the mysterium. And of course, I always think of some of the most powerful feelings that we work with in our work and in my work with dreamers. One of the most powerful feelings is fear. And often we've sort of demonized fear as like this bad thing that we shouldn't feel fear. We need to be strong, these kinds of things. But it's actually a very powerful motivator or feeling to work with, similar to pain, which also is a very important and powerful feeling to work with. I think of fear as, you've got the fear, which we could think of as self-centered, maybe, where you're going to lose something you have, or you're not going to get something you think you want. But there's this other type of fear. I sometimes talk about it as archetypal fear, and it's threshold fear. It's standing at the event horizon, so to speak, where you do not know what is on the other side. And you stay in that threshold place and allow yourself to move forward, or the dreams will sort of carry you forward. You'll notice that you're being carried forward towards that. But being able to stand in that moment, in that threshold moment, in the terror of that, is part of what allows us to grow into. And often it does mean letting go of something in order to surrender to that moment. So I can let others share a little bit more too about this idea of losing. I'm sure there's a lot more I could say, but I've spoken.
Thank you, Laura. I just want to check if there are any questions for Katia, Laura, or Sukhvinder. And if not, I feel like if Katia wants to respond or Sukhvinder wants to respond to what Laura shared. But first, want to check in for questions, and it can be anything. I also want to just bring your attention, like on chat, Satvik has put, each person's website. There's some beautiful writings, also articles that all three of them have written. So do go through the chat and just click on the links, so you can get to know more. But meanwhile, if there are any questions that you would like to ask, because we have about 10 minutes left before we end.
There is an inquiry from Swati Kumari. References to authentic sources to understand dreams, and I think they're checking healthy ways and practices to stay connected to the divine masculine.
Yeah, I'm going to say, like, if you go visit Laura's website, Laura, wouldn't this information be there?
Yeah, there's some information there, and I'm also going to put up, am I muted? Yeah, no. The Natural Dreamwork website.
Yes.
I'm trying to remember. I think it's the natural. So the naturaldream.com is there's a group, there's at least one of those folks here on this call, Donna. We have an organization, or sort of an association, I guess you could say, a gathering of like-minded folks who practice what we call natural dream work. And so we have a little website, and on that is a blog, and there's, you know, connections to writings from multiple practitioners about, you know, their work with dreams. And these folks come from all kinds of different backgrounds. Some of them are psychotherapists, some of them are expressive arts therapists, some of them are you know, come from different, I think, Donna, you do body, is it body soul work or body rhythm soul? I can't remember.
Interplay.
Yeah, interplay. So there's a variety of backgrounds, and the practitioners are all listed on there as well. If anybody was interested in working with someone, I also have availability. But I'm going to post the Natural Dream website up there, because you can get links to articles. And we do have a reading list that we use for, you know, that I use when I would do the EXP program. And another one of our practitioners, whose name is Karen Vishny, also has put together a reading list. So we can make sure that that's available as well.
Thank you so much,
Laura.
Laura. It's helpful.
Sure, yeah. And
And
Swati,
maybe-
I'll let somebody else comment on the healthy ways and practices to stay connected to the divine masculine.
Maybe
is-
Sukhvinder.
Question.
Well, so in a simple way, we have to give the divine masculine, we have to unhook him from the job we have put him to, and let him rest, and let him be, and let him come back into his heart. You know, that is why this process I was saying about losing, stop playing the game. He doesn't have to play the game. And as long as the feminine is unsafe, she will put him on the job of protecting and saying, oh, there is unsafety here. And he has to always put on his armor. He cannot take off his armor. He's put on duty all the time. So one of the ways of connecting to the divine masculine is for the feminine to truly come into her safety and to tell him, you're allowed to rest. You're allowed to heal yourself. So
That's so interesting. Thank you. I love that.
So someone had a question about ecological grief. Do you want to unmute it? Who had this question? Because we don't often talk about this, but losing your animals in displacement, losing your animals, leaving your animals behind, but also ecological grief is a big part of trauma. And I wonder who talked about that. Let me just check the name, because I like to make
Dr.
sure.
Sneha.
Dr. Sneha, yeah. I wonder, there's a wonderful resource. It's part of my self-care resource. I don't know if you would like me to share it, but I can share it. I always put my books that I love the most, and it's called Trauma Stewardship. It's a wonderful resource. And in here, the author talks a lot about ecologists, scientists who have done wonderful research and who are witnessing the disappearance of a special species of frogs, and or who, you know, that. So that's also in one way trauma, because if and grief, because you grieve the disappearance of something or the loss of something, and so what's very interesting is to bring it back as well, to the definition of trauma, one of the many definitions is that trauma is an experience that we don't have the capacity to be present for. So, and the sense of hopelessness and helplessness and powerlessness that it gives to our bodies. And so for ecologists or people who, when we talk about ecological grief, and I don't know if that's what you talked about it's so present, but we don't address it so much. But in this book, she does a wonderful job at addressing this subject. So this is definitely a self-care tool that I always go to. And when you asked your question, Sneha, it really reminded me of this.
Katia, can you just type the name and the author in the chat?
Yeah, let me do this. Double tasking.
Yeah, I would also encourage folks to, when you're thinking about grief, to feel into that, the concept as one definition that I really love of grief is that it is love remembered. So when we're grieving, we're remembering the love. And so even as the world experiences these losses, we are honoring through our grief the remembering of them. And of course, to the ecological grief it is so present in many of us. And so one way to work with it is to actually go out into nature and to commune with the trees, to actually spend time sitting with a flower or just being out in nature. And one thing that I do is what is called I call it an earth walk, but it's really a dawn to dusk. So it's just out there for the day, no devices, no anything, just being out in nature. And there's several places here in Vermont where I can do that. And if you live in a large city, it may be harder to achieve. But just spending some time and sending your love to the trees and to the animals and to the flowers and the plants. I mean, it's a small thing, but it counts.
I also feel that this Anthropocene epoch, where human beings feel that they are the most important species on the planet. This idea, this has caused a lot of disaster. Somehow we have to, that is why I say the decolonizing is very important, and it's very, very, very crucial part of the work of the feminine, because we have to learn to we are just a part of the ecosystem. And we have to bring that respect back that the indigenous cultures have of coexisting with everything. We have absolutely forgotten to coexist. We think everything is in service to us as human beings. And we can go out there and use pull out whatever resource we want. So yeah, so somewhere we have to deconstruct the way I see myself and the rest of the world.
Dan Siegel speaks of us, calling us not human beings, but earth beings. So reconnecting to all of that is around us. And that's a big part of trauma work as well. And a big part of the concept of non-coercion. This is maybe, if I'm slowly going into another direction, let me know. But one of the big part of the work that I do now, which I hadn't mentioned, is the trauma sensitive yoga and the guiding principles of non-coercion, showing up in a shared authentic space. But I don't know better than you, and you don't know better than me, but we are in a shared authentic experience in the practice of yoga. And also the concept of choice and offering choice, and invitation in the way that we work with groups, in the way that we work with each other. And so that really, that non-coercion is so important. And also that connectedness to the felt sense in our bodies, but Laura talked about that, to the connectedness of the tree, or of the sounds of the birds, of a sunset, or so this felt sense of your inner felt sense in your body of that connection, and those are really been the guiding principle of my practice, also as a therapist, as a practitioner, as a human being. This concept of ahimsa that's really present in many of the South Asian philosophies, not doing harm and not attachment to outcomes, and being present for what is, and although we're talking about big concepts of surrendering and connecting, it's not always so easy when we're in the process of healing. So how do we do that in I call that in steps, or in biteable bites? So that's also part of the trauma work. Try trading, or making the experience of surrendering, making the experience of reconnecting to our bodies, to the world, to each other in small steps, and that's a big part of the work as well. That is important to remind ourselves. To remind myself as well. That is not one tailor-made approach to everyone. Everyone connects differently. One person to dreams, one person to the divine feminine, another person to breathing practices, another person to the expressive arts, another person to the movement, and so finding that one connection to be able then to continue the inner work is really key. And that's the big value of bringing all these facets together.
Thank you, Katia. Thank you, Katia. I'm going to, I know we've crossed by a couple of minutes. It's okay. It's just, I feel like the conversation is just getting into that space where all the connections can come alive. But I want to just thank three of you all so much for being here and being willing to share and being so open and generous with your time and your wisdom. And I'm just going to encourage everyone, please do visit their websites. And they're all very open. They're happy to connect. They're happy to share. There's already so much writing that's already available. And if there's anything further that you'll want, I'm taking this opportunity. I hope it's okay to say that they can connect with you directly, because my experience has been that they're very, very open. So visit their websites. I'm going to bring this to an end, but do keep the chat because it has links to different things. We'll bring this to an end.
We will email also all the links.
Yeah, we'll email, and we'll also email the recording, I think, to those, because there are lots of people who have not made it. This recording will be emailed to them. And we're going to have to bring this to an end, but maybe we can just stay in a group circle just to bring alive the circle that, or we can, we do like what Laura does and hold up, touch hands. So yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I will be in touch. Thank you.
Yeah, self-hug. Thanking yourself.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. What a gift. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jyoti, Sanyot, everyone that's still here.
Thank you.
Lakshmi.
Thank you.
And Amrapali, Jatinder, Latitika. Oh, they're all here still. Lakshmi and Lakshmi, two Lakshmis. Oh, and Naina. Do you want us to stay back, Brinda, or?
No, I think they've already dropped out. They had other appointments, but I wanted to just say thank you so much, Katia. I wish I'd managed time more. I was just like, I know the connections were just beginning to like really go deeper. Yeah. But
okay.
Yeah, I hope you will come to India soon. I feel like there's a lot of potential that can, like collaborations and connections that can really deepen.
Yeah, I did. Did I?
You've
I
given
tell
us tentative dates. We have dates for December.
Yeah, we have set dates, so that's very
Yeah.
magical. And now I
Yeah.
know. Did I tell you that they revoked Canadians' e-visa rights? And and so I was supposed to be in India in April, and at the 1 week before I went to apply for my visa, and I realized the rights of e-visa was revoked. And I was so shocked. So I had to cancel all my trips. I had to find a replacement for my course in Chennai. It was a little bit. I hope they. Yes, it's a little bit of a tug of war
I can imagine.
between Canada.
But it's everywhere. It's everywhere, actually. I know a lot of friends who were not able to travel to Europe because Europe is not even opening visa facilities.
Yes.
I have an old visa, which is actually going to expire. So I'm here, but it's crazy. It's crazy.
No. Yeah. So it's a good lesson to be on the other side of the
Yeah.
it happens to everyone all the time.
Yeah.
So suddenly, I mean, it's a reality for most, So in a way, I was, in a way, thankful for the experience. Not, but this is what happens all the time, and so, and suddenly to me, so it was a good learning experience.
I want to say I really appreciate right now your